Hi there, it's Marcy Eberhardt, and I am preparing a video for ARE 5046 in Minky Gion's class. So let's get started. My lesson plan modification is on EBD students. I do teach a lot of at-risk children, and I experience behavioral issues constantly. But it's important in the very beginning of the semester to establish rules for behavior and make them clear and concise. So it's a lot less strain on me at the end of the day as I can stay as organized as possible. Okay, a couple of the points I wanted to bring up in this class, ARE 5046. I have pulled, printed, and read Chapter 4, Students with Emotional and or Behavioral Disorders by Adrienne Hunter and Beverly Johns, two teachers that teach art in various places throughout our nation. Adrienne's in Pittsburgh. Anyway, at any rate, I wanted to read the introduction from Chapter 4. These students who already have had many wrongs or wrong experiences, they have never learned that in art there isn't a right or a wrong. In art, there are so many different ways to accomplish a task. That's so important, especially to EBDs who are coming in and they're already intimidated or frightened that they may not be able to make an artistic project, and maybe they've never even had art. So it's up to us as teachers to make sure that we accommodate EBDs and students with disabilities, setting their mind at ease that there is no wrong or right when it comes to making art. I was an EBD student and had a lot of things going on when I grew up in Los Angeles. Most of my students are from Tampa, the greater Bay Area of Tampa, and they come to me with all kinds of different things that have gone on in their lives and are currently going on in their heads. I try not to share or show any of my personal feelings. Adapting or modifying art lessons does not mean that I'm lowering my standards. It means that I'm simply pushing the focus, my focus, or anything going on with me personally, setting aside any differences. Like last week, I had a real rough week around the management of the center where my school is located in Homosassa, Florida. And it was very nerve-wracking and it was very emotional for me. And to continue to teach children art after school, that's primarily my business practice, is to teach after school art lessons. I had to set aside and reserve my emotions and feelings to bring the best out in my students. They come to this school because most of all, art's not offered at their school. I mostly teach middle school children, but I teach children as young as 18 months. When they get here, they've had, many emotional ups and downs throughout their day, especially my sixth graders who were just starting middle school. And so I like to try to allow them to talk when they first come into the school and get anything off their chest that they might want to share. And I try to turn it around to where they leave here with a smile on their face and they're more relaxed through art. So let's get started here. I really enjoyed Adrienne Hunter and Beverly Johns' Chapter 4 on students with emotional and or behavioral disorders. It says a whole lot. Let me read the very beginning that can also be found. It's in the introduction and also on page 2. There are students who already have had many wrong experiences. They have never learned that in art there is not a right or wrong. In art, there are so many different ways to accomplish a task. And that's the way I grew up. I grew up in the mainstream of Los Angeles, California, very cultural, diverse area, gangs, a lot of things that the other articles talk about that I read at the beginning of this semester on student behavior in the art classrooms. They talk about gangs. That was interesting to me because I grew up with gangs. I'd like to say I know a lot about these things, but it was more I experienced a lot of these things growing up. So, as far as behavioral disorders go, the two pieces of reading that were provided to us in this particular class are essential to applying that to behavioral issues within the classroom. Okay, with no further ado, I'm going to get into my lesson plan for modification of lesson or activity for students with disabilities, but in this case it's going to be EBD. I've had a real strong passion for teaching EBD for many years now, probably because I'm a EBD. Introducing the existing lesson, it's going to be on clay. And the learning objections are going to be students will be able to create a clay monster that shows good use of texture and proportion. This past week, one of my behavioral students has created this little monster, and I'm not sure what she calls it, but she's very proud of it, and she's had many compliments from her peers. She's leaving it here till this week so she can make sure that nothing's falling off of it and that her texture's right, her proportion's right, and then she's going to paint it in fluorescent paint. You should have seen a picture of her that I posted on Instagram for the Florida State Teachers site, and she was painting a spirograph in various fluorescent colors this past Friday. Okay, along with the other lesson objectives, students will use accurate vocabulary while constructing and describing their artwork. Students will be able to complete an artist statement, and I strongly encourage my students to create artist statements and get ahead a little bit before they get to middle school or high school, and describe their use of texture and proportion, particularly in this clay artwork project. The resources. Okay, prior knowledge is, I like to establish what their prior knowledge is before they get here. Students should have a prior knowledge of key vocabulary, which includes form, sculpture, texture, proportion, pinch pot, slip, score, or slip and score, and coil. The instructional activities, the guiding questions. What are the guiding questions for this lesson? What is the difference between visual and tactile texture? How do I create proportion in my artwork? How do artists such as yourself use color, value, and texture in their artwork? I get a lot of funny questions at different points with my students. Last week, a student asked me, Marcy, what do you think my art style is? Well, this is a fourth grader who has ADHD, and she's very, very talented, but she only draws one way, and it's very good, but she never goes outside of the box, and that's what I'm trying to work with her on is developing her skills. So far she does characters and faces, and she does them beautifully. I'm trying to get her to where she'll attach a body to it. So my answer to her was stylistic. And I talked to her about working on hands and feet and the torso this next week when she comes in. Okay, how will the teacher present the concept or skill to students? Students will define in their art journals the definition of form and proportion and know what these two words mean to them. After students have defined these words, they'll turn and talk to each other and discuss this with their peers. They'll next view the images of monsters and images of past student examples and the internet and make practice monsters out of modeling dough. This will give students time or this will give students time to practice clay techniques and collaborate with their classmates on ideas about their monsters. This is another monster that one of my students, 6 years old, from Brooksville, made. He made a spider, and he painted it with fluorescent and put a hook here so he can hang it from a tree in his front yard. The most fascinating thing to my students right now is fluorescent paint. Okay, guided practice. What activities or exercises with the students complete with teacher guidance or my guidance? They'll sketch in their art journals what they'd like their monsters to look like. Students will view the images of monsters and start to identify features they would like in their clay monster. As a class, I review what clay is and how to create various shapes. Okay, the instructional activities. I give students 8 ounces or an 8-ounce chunk of clay. They need to break it off and roll it into a spear first. Then students will push their thumb into the spear and squeeze around the sides to create their shape of their monster. It may be a mouth of a monster, so shape it however they'd like the mouth to show an emotion, whether it's yelling, sad, happy, or scared. This past week when I went to Lecanto High School Art Academy, David Brown had a student there that wants to go to Florida State University in the future. He is in his 4th year of ceramics, and he had one of the coolest monster faces I've ever seen in my life. The tongue was so realistic, and I'm sorry I didn't get a shot of it, but I will next time I go out, as I've been invited back. I'll next be reviewing primary, and after that, the middle school art department. So the teacher, or me, should introduce the clay models, slip and score and coil. And after this demonstration, I'll have the students slip and core 2 pieces together, monitor the class for understanding of the technique. Students will continue to work on their clay monsters and add details such as eyes, nose, feet, arms, tails, spikes. So these are Amina's spikes, and we had to redo them this past Friday, because they were falling off, and I had to show her how to join pieces together so that when they dried, they would stay in contact. In the very end, they'll carve their name and art code on the bottom of the monster, and after the monsters are completely dry, in this case, in my class, they'll be able to paint them. I do not have a kiln here. I'll have a kiln starting this summer, but it'll be for glass fusing, which will be offered in that class in the future as well. I'm adding on a tail end couple of video clips here. I just want to make sure that I held up Imana's little monster clearly enough that you guys can see it, with its little spikes on its back and the face that she pinched on the front. Again, it's not done. She's going to be painting it in fluorescence this week. And I want to make sure, too, that you all understand that I am referring to the Florida-based standards for this particular lesson in clay. Thanks.